Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/smartcookie.
A choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a rock.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expounding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Thomas. This week, guys, we have an outstanding conversation with the great Amy Belair. She comes on to talk about her work with the Akashic Records readings, which in her words is like a Google search for your soul, which I love that. She also has her own podcast, Third Eye Awakening, that will, of course, be linked in the show notes below. You guys, without further ado, the great Amy Belair. Today on the show, we have Amy Belair. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you and your time. You're absolutely wonderful and a delight. I've heard not only your podcast, which we will talk about, but as well, I found you on Tinfoil Hat, which also a couple of other guests have been saying that they have found you on there as well. That's a cool medium for all of us to come together. And we were just talking about how cool it is that all of us podcasters kind of can come together and be on each other's shows and kind of just swap ideas and information. And it's just such a cool community, or a soul tribe, as we were talking about. So if you don't mind, just for my audience, those that haven't discovered you yet, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. So my name is Amy. I live in Ontario, Canada, and currently my gig is reading the Akashic Records for people. It's my full-time gig. I absolutely love it. It's my very favorite kind of work to do. I also run programs that I channel. So the information is not necessarily coming from me. It's coming from the Akashic Records on things like 5D magic and manifestation, how to access the Akashic Records. Transmuting trauma is a big one that I do a lot. And what's the other one more recently? Oh, like activating your psychic gifts. So that's what I love to do. I just really love to talk to people about how magical and amazing they are, how much their identity, their understanding of who they are extends so much farther than the boundaries of like this avatar in this lifetime. And it's just my favorite kind of stuff to do.
It's beautiful, and you do an incredible job at it. Like I said, I've heard several of your shows. They're absolutely wonderful. I will be linking, of course, to that in the show notes as well, so you guys can go find her and go check her out. She's fantastic, as well as your Instagram with your permission, your North Star.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, on the work that you do, how did you get started doing that?
Well, I always wanted to do this. That's the truth. I always wanted to be psychic, and what psychic meant to me was being able to offer clarity and answers to people that they didn't otherwise have access to. So I always wanted to, rather than just predict the future for my own purposes, I wanted to be able to do readings for people or do it as a service. Like I used to want to be what's the word? You know, those, police sketch artists. And then I found out that they're mostly computer now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I just
Okay.
felt like I have such a gift I'm a gifted portrait artist. And, I had also a gift for like receiving what people are actually thinking. So like teasing out beyond their words what the images are. So sort of a bit of a telepathy kind of energy reading thing. And I would just always spend my time figuring out like, how can I do that? But at the same time, not feeling confident in it at all. And the thing that changed it for me, like I spent like 12 to 15 years wanting to do it and not believing that I could. Because it's not anything my guidance counselor talked to me about in high school. You know what I mean? It's not a career that anyone was like, you know what you'd be really good at, Amy? It's creating a business reading people's Akashic records. But what really changed it was the experience of losing my son 5 years ago when he was 20 days old. So he was born prematurely, and the whole thing was it required me to lean into my intuition so much, and to lean into the navigating of uncertainty insofar as like I really learned the limitations of medical science data through that experience. I already knew that it was limited. I already had that sense, but to experience it firsthand is different than just kind of knowing it.
Yeah.
So I just understood that, my doctor, I had an OB who I had a previous professional relationship with. So I knew him really well, and he was excellent. Like I would have handpicked him. I feel like I lucked out, and I just had absolutely amazing healthcare providers. But I also understood like they didn't have any answers for me. They couldn't guarantee anything. They were just doing their best in the moment. And part of their best is to look at the data, interpret it, and, make their best guess, really. So that really bolstered my belief in intuition, because I understood like, okay, they don't know either. Like we have this misconception around anybody in the field of science, anybody that we would call an expert in more of those left brain, more structured fields, we assume they just know things. And it was very eye-opening to realize like, no, they don't know anything more than I do. And in fact, I probably know better than they do, because I'm in direct connection with my son's energy, his essence, his soul.
Yeah. I completely agree with you on the medical field part of it. And there's been several books written about this kind of thing, like The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, of course. And then you've got like the An End to Upside Down Thinking, which is real. It's kind of along the same lines, but he has other examples, and it's very well written by Mark Gober. These types of things where actual scientists are sitting there doing research, and they're finding things that are contrary to what science actually tells us, the mainstream science, if we want to put it that way. So yeah, I completely agree with you that I think that is a very untapped resource. It's done for many motives, probably. Of course, the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want you to know how truly powerful you are, because then you don't need them anymore. And of course, the old adage that doctors don't get paid on curing you, they get paid on treating you. So they don't have an invested interest in even exploring other topics. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of bullshit in a way, because then it's just theories built on theories built on theories. And so they keep proving themselves rather than actually taking a look outside the, inverted commas, science, and looking into things from a different perspective. So with your son, apologies on your loss. That is horrible. But the way that you've turned it into something fantastic is something I'm incredibly impressed with. So would you just please continue on with that story about your son and what he does for you now?
Yeah. So I learned to navigate the moment, all the uncertainty of the moment, through my intuition, and to acknowledge the ways that he was communicating with me. Even before he was conceived, I started to feel his presence. And then during the pregnancy and after he was born, he wasn't in my body anymore, but I could really feel his energy and his aura and his strength. And then after he passed away, I just received, like, there were these little moments where I would go numb from the grief, as one does. And it's like he took his opportunity to blast through a message. And so the first message I got from him was in like maybe 4 hours after we let him go. We had to let him go because he was just kicking on. But man, like, everything in the kitchen sink was thrown at him, and life was not going to be good for him if he kept living. So we chose, under the strong recommendations of the care team that we had, to remove his breathing support and let him pass away. And that was like absolutely the hardest thing for me to ever do. It's so counterintuitive to watch your baby die, to let your baby die when everything is coded within you to protect them and ensure their survival. Yeah. And so, I was really eaten up with, is this the right decision? My husband was absolutely certain it was the right decision. And I agree with him now. But at the time, I didn't have that clarity. It was really challenging. And so about 4 hours later, my son came to me. And he came with this feeling of like a helium balloon rising and rising and rising, and this happiness, like elation that did not match me and how I was feeling. And I knew that was him. And then he came to me a couple hours after that and said that he wasn't finished with our family, and he wasn't going to be going away or far away or anything like that. And I kept having those experiences in the subsequent months after he passed away, and I realized that they would only happen when I was in between the big waves of grief, the crushing darkness of grief. And so that showed me how much my own vibration affects my ability to receive information, from him in that case, because that was all I cared about. And so I would, I call it fine tuning my vibration, but it just means being very judicious about the thoughts I was having and the feelings it would produce and the beliefs that would then ensue, to keep myself as open as possible to receiving his communications when they came. And I also was met with this realization that nobody was going to be able to prove this for me or verify it. I had to decide whether I was going to believe in it or not. And it was a really easy decision, actually, because on the one hand, I could believe that this is just my imagination. This is all bullshit. It's wishful thinking. He's gone. He's dead. Absolute heartbroken, back plummeting down into the darkness. Or I could believe, no, he's been with me before he was conceived. He was with me through the whole pregnancy. He's with me still. He's trying to, like extend an olive branch sort of, and like, it's the least I could do to receive it and believe in it. Yeah. So it felt like actually an easy choice. And that's the choice that we all have all the time. But it took losing him and that experience for me to see with such clarity that, like, we are the deciders on what we believe, and what we believe is then true. So, but I was still really plagued with, why did this happen? And really taking like a micro level inventory of everything I had ever done, all of the ways that I'd been a shit and I'd hurt people, and, just things I had regretted and felt shame about, and how I must have done something to deserve this. And I could tell this was not a place to set up camp. Like, I needed to figure out how to resolve this, because it was going to change who I was if I stayed in this place. And I have an older son, so I just really felt like I had to, I had to figure this out. He couldn't lose his brother and his mom, in a manner of speaking. Mm-hmm. So one day I was working and listening to a podcast, and I heard the Akashic Records mentioned, and the words felt like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like they just felt like magic. Like they grabbed my attention, and it was like, oh, what's there? I have to find out what this is. So I looked into it right away, found a program that teaches how to access it, and signed up for it and learned how to do it. And I went in with my big question, why did this happen? And I got, it took me a while to work up the nerve to go in, let me say that, but I didn't go in with any like tester questions. It was like the big one. And I got an answer that was so instantaneously healing and relieving. It just completely changed everything and lifted the burden so that I still, of course, grieve the things that I have lost. Like, I'll never see him grow up, and I won't hug him. And those things are painful, of course. But I don't really feel like I've lost him. I just have a different experience with him than I do with my other children. And I don't feel like any tragedy has befallen me. I don't feel sorry for myself. All of that was lifted in that one trip into the Akashic Records, and it's never come back. And I just knew, I was like, oh, okay, this is real. I need to share this with people because like, wow, I mean, I could have spent years in therapy and maybe never gotten to that place. So the answer that I found, because people of course always want to know that, was that it wasn't anything that I had done in terms of my limited concept of karma or anything that my husband had done, because he had the same thoughts and fears. It was the desire of my son's soul to have an experience that would sort of like bring closure to an energy that was still open, a sort of a wound, an experience that still had an emotional charge around it from another life, which was his decision to take his own life during a war experience. And he just didn't, when he died in that life where he ended his own life, suddenly he expanded beyond the confines of his little human perspective, and the human perspective was even more narrowed by the trauma and the stress and the adrenaline. So he wasn't really making a decision from a clear space of lucidity. And when he died, suddenly his perspective expanded, woof, and he was able to see everything, the whole picture. And he just felt really disappointed. It just wasn't the choice he really wanted to make. He felt, not any fear of being judged or being condemned or anything like that, but it just wasn't how he wanted it to be. Kind of, it feels a little bit like that masculine feeling of like, oh, I wimped out. Like, I want to like tough it out and prove that I can do this. And so it feels like he wanted a mulligan. He wanted a do-over, and he asked us if we would be his parents so that he could have that experience, but get it kind of like really intense in a tiny little lifespan, ripping off the Band-Aid and bringing closure. But his whole deal was that he was not going to end his own life. He was going to wait to be released, even at the risk that we wouldn't release him. Right.
And it lends itself to the idea that there are past lives and that you have, and I like how you held up air quotes, karma, because I've got some thoughts on that I wanted to ask you about. It kind of lends itself to the idea that past lives do exist and that what you do in one affects the next one. Now, what happened in his life before that? Were you given information about that?
No, I was given information about, well, I didn't really ever ask, honestly, but I was given information. I wanted to know what life he and I had together that made him sure that I would fulfill my part, which was to love him unconditionally and want him unconditionally. And he showed me a life, I think it was in Afghanistan, but I have no idea the time period because we were both children. And I don't even know if we were actually brother and sister or we just sort of adopted each other, but we didn't have any parents. And there was a lot of I can't remember the word, not militias, but bands of marauding sort of factions, that rebel factions, I guess. There was a lot of lawlessness basically and violence. And all I saw was the end of our life, which was that we were hiding in an abandoned building somewhere in a small town, in a very sandy, arid area. And we were discovered and killed together. But I was the sister, I was the older one, and I would hold him and sing to him and, do my best to keep him safe and preserve his feelings of being a child. And so that's what he showed me that we had together.
Damn. It's challenging too on the idea and the concept that you relive traumas from back then, because that right there, even if you have never gone through anything horrific in your own life, which I know just based on your story, but also based on your character, I know that you've gone through some shit even in this life just because of how amazing you are. But it's interesting in the fact that now you're reliving things from another life and having that trauma. So like I said, even if you had no trauma in this life, you've still got trauma from past lives that you have to address. And I'm fascinated by the idea just simply because it's awesome if you think about it, that you're able to tap into, or that we live multiple lives and that it is that way. I'm more of a fan. Of course, I don't know. I live in a world of possibilities, like everybody should, right? Firm beliefs only limit your ideas and understanding. So I like the idea of that it's just a ride, right? And that you choose to come on this ride, and then when it's done, it's done. And that we're all God experiencing it self-subjectively, and that we're all part of the same thing. And that it's not necessarily a school per se, it's just an experience or a ride, like I said, like Bill Hicks said. So the concept of past lives, and of course, like you said, what you believe in is what's real. And so the experience of having multiple realities here on this plane, and I'm shooting here, but we're going to come back to it, and that you can experience different things from different perspectives. But it is interesting, though. So what happens in the Akashic Records? So first of all, tell my audience what the Akashic Records are, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, it's so for me, the best way that I understand it and can explain it is it's similar to the internet in that it's a non-physical field of information that is around us everywhere because it's non-physical, and that we access it through portals. So for the internet, our portals are our devices. For the Akashic Records, the portal is our consciousness. And it's not, I can definitely tell that some people are drawn to it. It's their thing, like it's my thing. But that doesn't mean that those people are the only ones who are ordained to access this information. It's information that we all get to access. It's just like, it doesn't speak to some people. Like I have no desire to become a champion ski person.
Right.
It's not, it's not for me, but it's not that I can't do it. It's just not calling me. And so the Akashic Records belong to all of us, but there are some of us who act as portals where we're really dialed into it and we're, open to it, to receiving that information.
So on the concept of, it's so cool. It's like, I remember from our conversation before, you said it's like a Google search for your soul. And I think that is awesome. I think that's perfect. And it's very well put. So thank you. The concept again of the past life information, are you a fan of the fact that time is all existing at the same time? Okay. Are you ever able to tap into future lives that you've had? Really?
Well, okay. So future lives, I mean, yes, but it's very hard to understand and interpret that information because with the past, we have a better context.
That makes sense.
So it feels a lot more insubstantial, much harder to articulate. It's easier even to access future points of ourselves in this life because you have some more context. But future lifetimes, it feels like the information is just so different. So many variables have changed that our brain as a temporal processing machine can't interpret. It just can't interpret it. So it's not something that it's more something I seem to randomly experience rather than something that I try to go into, if that makes sense.
Yeah, with intent. I get it. That's still cool, though. So what about your future? I'm just curious about what is your future hold for you? Have you glimpsed a piece into that and any feelings come back or anything?
In this life?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I feel like what it feels like is my highest probability and the intention of my soul is to live a really long life and die as an old woman, and to continue down this path of doing this particular kind of work. Sometimes I get glimpses of like a point where I just stop using words because they're hard to use, and where I just do what I call psychic healing, where I don't know, through eye contact and hugs, I love that. Like figure out and move people's stuff, and they just have it's not even me. It's just they are ready and they have a big release and they do all their own healing, and I'm just sort of like catalyzing it. And it feels to me like there is, when I look at the world right now, particularly since, we connected through Tinfoil Hat and there's a lot of dark conspiracy stuff that comes up. When I look at the world, what I feel for us collectively and for myself is that the worst case scenario that, has a lot of us afraid at some time, certainly myself, is not the probable one. It's just not the probable one. So it might have it feels like it's getting weaker to me every day. So it will possibly continue to have some manifestations into greater extremes, but the consciousness of humanity is just rejecting it.
Yeah.
Overall.
I completely agree. I'm seeing it too, especially now that we're back to 100% back here in Texas. And a lot of people fought against it. And an observation that I made about it, and I want to talk to you about conspiracy theories as well. An observation I made about it is it seems like it started real Orwellian. And it seems like they told you what to do. And so therefore you were forced to do that. And by the end of it, it was more Aldous Huxley, but where people were demanding that, right? It's like we went through 1984 and what's the name of the damn book?
Brave New World?
Thank you. Brave New World. Okay. So it's like we went through those in 1 year. Because by the end of this, and just even opening up back here, it's people were losing their damn minds, and they're boycotting businesses now that allow people to come in with no masks, and they are losing their damn minds. But what's interesting about it is I've noticed that half of the businesses, it was about 50-50. And then people would go online, and those very small amount of people with really loud voices. And those were the ones that were losing their shit. And they were saying, oh, I'm boycotting your business, and people quit that worked at those establishments. And it was this, it's just this further divide. It's this further prolonging and perpetuation of this divide I feel designed, but that's another topic. But then you have the people who just said, nope, we're getting back to it. And then slowly but surely people were like, yes, we want to get back to it. Because again, that super loud voice, it's a very small number of people. They're just really, really loud. So they sound like a bunch of people, right? So let me ask you about conspiracy theories. What was the one that got you the first time you can remember hearing something like that and going, maybe the government is lying to us, or maybe, they're all full of shit?
Yeah, it started with little ones. So my parents were both public school teachers, and it kind of started with the education system and me just feeling, when I was about 17, 18, I was like, I don't want to go to university. I'm tired. I'm tired of the, because I was in the academic stream to prepare for university. I was like, I don't want to write any more papers. I want to go have an adventure. Like, I want to waitress somewhere for a little while and just like, whatever. And that sounds really like sort of pithy and like not a big deal, but I could see the reaction in this like bizarre idea that like you'll fail as a human being if you don't take this path. And I was like, what kind of Kool-Aid have you drunk? I have I have nothing but advantages. I am a very fortunate person. So why would I have to like ensure something? So that was the first one. And then the second one was realizing the beauty industry and sort of waking up at some point, like in my mid-20s and being like, how many like potions and lotions and shampoos do I have in my bathroom? And I keep buying new ones because they all suck. They don't work. They're expensive. What is this leading to? Why do I care? And I started just really opening my eyes to the experience I was having and my girlfriends and the ways that were manipulated through the media, and thinking, what if females, and I know it applies to males too, but this was my thinking at the time, what if females just weren't manipulated in this way, and we felt super beautiful as we are and confident as we are, and none of our energy went into this? How would humanity be different just based on that? So that sort of primed the pump. And then when I went into the healthcare field as a midwife myself, that sort of was the nail in the coffin that allowed me to see everything this year for what it was, because I could just see just the healthcare system is nonsensical. It's pure nonsense. Even in Canada, like people, a lot of the time Americans think it's so great in Canada because we don't have to pay for anything. And it is. That's amazing. I really greatly value and appreciate that. It's at the expense of it's because we have your army.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Right. So, like,
you don't have to worry about anything. We got you. Yeah.
Let's not pretend it's because we're so great. But nonetheless, like working as a midwife, specifically the midwifery model of care is supposed to be supporting a woman's choice, supporting a woman and her family centering, woman centering, basically so that she can choose to have her baby at home or in the hospital, whatever, like she gets to be in the driver's seat of her care. That's not what it's like at all. It's so disingenuous. And I believe that midwives go into it, as I did, with big, pure hearts. And we want to do that, but we are employees of the government. We are regulated by the government. So when push comes to shove, we're answering to the government. And I just, I got so tired of witnessing myself throwing my clients under the bus because I had to protect myself. And so I was like, no, I can't do this. This isn't for me. So the government doesn't care about us is what I came to realize.
100%. Thank you. Preach, Amy, preach. And it's an institutional issue because people do go into this, like our soldiers in the military. I have a great reverence for people who choose to go into the military. Not a fan of the institution itself and what we do around the world and the amount of spending we trade off for that to at the sacrifice of our own people. I don't think we should do anything outside of our country if one person here goes without food or shelter. It's just my opinion on it. Also, to do with big government and the institutions, they take more and more and more out of people, and that's why it's a big challenge with everything going on. Because I think the government has two jobs. Keep foreign powers from bombing our country, right? Keep anything from happening negative like that to our country, and take care of our infrastructure. Make sure our power grid doesn't fail like it just did here in Texas a few weeks ago. That was pretty eye-opening. And make sure our bridges don't collapse, because if you look at our infrastructure, it will scare the shit out of you, out of what the rating we got. And this goes for a lot of countries around the world. So that's what the government should do. Everything else, just leave up to us. Quit telling us how to live our lives. Quit telling us how to let us take our health into our own hands, right?
Yeah.
And this is the interesting part about what's been going on the last year, and the way that you reacted whenever you talked about it with head and hands and all that. That is exactly how I feel about it as well. It was a great visualization of how I feel about the thing as well. So on conspiracy theories still, though, I think that there's levels of them, right? I think that there's fun ones like the Mandela Effect and Project Bluebeam, fun ones like that. And then there's really deep ones that really could affect you on this level. As far as when you look into 9/11, that's pretty weird. Then everything, like you said, that was happening last year with the controls, with the medical field, with all of this. But I heard it said that, I think it was Gordon White on Higher Side Chats. Awesome episode. I'll send it to you, actually, so you can check it out. But he was saying that your response to the situation is part of the situation, or your response to the crisis is part of the crisis.
100%.
Right. So I got into this place as well, and it took me a long time. It was actually one conversation I had with my wife that was so simple, but it woke me up. And it was that I've been looking into conspiracy theories for years. And it's like Charlie Robinson from Macroaggressions talks about. He calls himself a conspiracy analyst. And I love that. I think that that's a better way to put it. But it is something that the more you look into it, you've got a lot of fucking reasons not to trust your government. And there's a lot of crazy shit that goes on that will drive you nuts. And then you get to that point inevitably where you have to wake everybody up. You're like, guys, you've got to watch this video. You've got to hear this interview. Just please do the research, right? Do the research. That's one thing that we conspiracy analysts always want to put out there, because it's so much. And maybe that's part of the crisis, is it is so much. It's too hard to look into. But then you get to a place to where, just like that quote, your response to the crisis is part of the crisis. They plan, and I'm going to put this in a very vague term, but whoever they are, plan a crisis. And then they know that a shitload of people are going to believe whatever they say and follow that. And then a bunch of other people are going to look at massive, I'll call them Easter eggs, that are out there in public for everybody to find. And you could see this in real time, and you can go, no, look at this. Look who paid for that. Guys, wake up. And so it further divides. And so this side of things, where I find myself often, is it's a shitty place to be in some ways, right? Or it can be if you choose to. So the conversation I had with my wife was, I was showing her all this stuff. We were looking at the vaccines. We were looking at a bill, the guy, I can't say his name because I'll censor this episode. But the thing about it is that I said, they're lying to us. And she just looked at me so sweet and said, they always have been. And I was like, okay, got it. That was like the wake up. And then I was like, and I've been saying for years, you got to just tend the garden you got. The only thing that you can handle is what's in you mentally, emotionally, physically, in your immediate space and circle and family. And that's the only thing that you really have influence on. So to worry about these things, again, it's part of that crisis. So what's a fun conspiracy theory? That's the most fun one to you, that if was real or whatever that you've looked into, you just enjoyed doing the research on?
Yeah, I think Antarctica. I'm always so interested in that one. I'm like, what is going on there? Yes. And I really love the idea of hollow Earth. The idea of it, I don't know, I'm not settled. And even flat Earth, I love the idea of that. That was sort of new this year. I remember 6 or 7 years ago, my brother-in-law kind of was like, oh, maybe the earth is flat. And then he heard an argument that kind of like, fixed it in his mind that no, it's a globe. And so I tried to talk to him about it this year because I heard some pretty compelling arguments, like those maps that like lay everything, and like, it's in the logos of all the big organizations. I'm like, what's up with that?
Like the UN, that Asimov map? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's fun to me because it feels inconsequential. However, it's funny because people lose their mind if you ask, like, if you are even willing to entertain the possibility that possibly because I have it verified with my own eyes that the Earth is actually a globe, maybe it's possible that it's not, or that I just don't have a complete understanding. People lose it.
Lose their damn minds, and they give you so much shit about it, which I'm fine with. I have thick skin, I don't mind. But this was my argument. I actually have a good buddy of mine, and he's poor guy. He's just getting into dipping his toe into what I'm all about, really. And he's just like, this is exhausting. I can't do this, And he's so sweet. He's so funny. He doesn't mean it, but we have a good time. And so I actually told him, I want to put the heliocentric model, or the globe Earth, on trial with you, and I will be able to prove without a shadow of a doubt that you can't prove that the Earth is round. And I want to do this so bad. I think we're actually going to do a show about it. We'll probably dress up and do like a courtroom kind of thing.
It'll be so good.
Yeah, because you have to prove 100%. And what you said, you're not looking at it. You haven't seen it with your own eyes. You're hearing it from people who have lied to us since the beginning of time. So why the hell would we even believe something as asinine as the shape and size of the Earth, or what the actual reality that we live in is, right? I mean, why not? If they're lying to us about everything else, and what if that's the big thing? That's one of the arguments, is if they can lie to us about that, they've fucked up your whole reality, and then therefore they control everything. It's an interesting one, and I agree with you. There was this time, again, my wife, God bless her, she is so sweet. I did go through about 3 weeks of only watching flat Earth videos and looking into it. And I'd be like, dude, have you seen the flight paths with the airplanes? Why the hell do they do that? And why do they disappear over the Indian Ocean? What the fuck is going on? And the same thing with you about Antarctica. I find that fascinating. Now, one thing I love about the flat Earth model, or whatever, is the concept of, one of the ones that's most fun to me ties into Antarctica, like you. Have you heard of the theory that if the Earth is flat, okay, and they have that sun, that just spins and heats up our little area right here. You've seen the model. And what if Antarctica is an ice wall that's wrapped all the way around us? But my favorite part about this is if you go over that ice wall a little ways, or however long, there's another world there. And if you go over the ice wall another ways, there's another world there. And there's all these different societies and existences happening on a flat plane with just ice in between it.
Well, that's kind of the map of Westworld. I don't know if you've seen Westworld, but that's kind of the idea. And I feel like anytime concepts like that show up in high budget, really well produced, like high hype, but also kind of like offbeat, cool media productions, like entertainment productions, there's a grain of truth there. I am not sold on what that grain of truth is, but it always kind of makes me be like, like, it's not just imaginary that they put that there or that they designed it this way. They're always revealing, something of what they're up to and what is actually going on.
Yeah, because don't
trying to be like, oh, that's enough. That's all we have to tell them.
Exactly. And then they do things like, say that it's crazy, or you're a conspiracy theorist, or demystify anything that you say, or belittle, and then ostracize you, right? So it's just perception management at that point, right?
Yes.
But the interesting part about what you just said is absolutely they do stuff like that, because I've heard the idea that they have to tell you, and so therefore there's no karma. And again, I still want to talk to you about karma. There's no karma on their heads because they've revealed what they're really doing, or what their intentions are, or what the world really is, and therefore the karma's on us, or the earnest is on us to figure it out for ourselves, because then it's off of their hands. They're like, oh, we told you what it was. We told you that this is what we're doing to everybody, and y'all just said it was crazy, or we told you to tell everyone it was crazy, so therefore that's how we got away with it. It's like that's the grand design of all of it. It's this perception management element. Another interesting one, so Game of Thrones. So I was watching this with my wife back when it was a thing, and the intro, okay, back to the Hollow Earth thing. Have you ever paid attention to that's Hollow Earth? That's inner Earth. Because if you look at it, whenever the camera pans around and stuff, number one, it's a central sun in the middle with the symbols of the houses or whatever. And if you look at it, the horizon sweeps upwards and out. like you're on the inside of inner Earth. I don't know if they did that on purpose. I was just telling my wife, I was like, that's the inner Earth thing. It's so cool. Just go watch the beginning credits sometime and check that out. So let me ask you about karma as a concept. I don't know. I'm not a fan of a subscriber to the concept of karma. The reason being because I think that you do have a choice in this life as far as what you experience. And those two things are love and fear. And you operate out of those two states of existence, right? In my mind, karma is another way of control. It's another way that somebody made up an idea or observed something and then called it an idea, and it's become this method of control. So like, let's say, for instance, Christians, they go to church and they get told, if you don't this, you go here. So karma, though, to me, in my mind, like I said, it operates out of fear, not love, for two reasons. You are fearful of not getting good, so therefore you do good so that you can get good, and you're fearful of returning bad, so therefore you do good to avoid bad. I'm not a fan of the concept of karma for that reason. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. It feels like, whereas operating from love, so feeling like you do good because you want to do good, because that's what feels in alignment for you, is an expansive feeling. It's moving more into the fullness of who we are. Whereas making the choice do good because you're afraid of some unseen consequence that, based on a bunch of variables that you don't have, account for right now, where you're going to reap what you sow, so to speak. That's a collapsing in on yourself. That's being less than you could be because you're afraid of what could come down the road. And I think, it's totally a perception management thing. It keeps us locked into our temporal processing machinery. And so what I found through the Akashic Records, this was very clarifying around karma, is the concept is actually more about, how do I put it? It's kind of like, it's less about what we do. It's more about the leftover emotional charge, the leftover story that didn't get resolved in a particular life. So it's not like, what I see is that there's nobody waiting to judge us when we leave this life or any life that we're living. We assess our own lives. And it's not even a judging our own lives. It's just taking account of how it went and what, feeling the fullness of the things that we didn't have access to from our limited human perspective. And then there are things that, like, similar to my son, that we just want to try and do over. A lot of the time, that's what karma is. But also sometimes it's just like, it's a little bit like a relationship that didn't get closure, like in this life, like we've had a relationship and it ended and there wasn't closure, and it always pulls you back. Like, you have dreams about, it's weird, you feel like you're crazy, you wonder about your ex, what are they doing? It's Mercury retrograde and you want to text them or something like that, some crazy stuff like that. Because until you get that final piece of understanding, like that piece of the puzzle, it feels open, it feels undone. And that's so much what karma is like just missing a perspective that would just put it to rest. And so when we come back, we're not, and we choose things in order to balance our karma. It's not a punishment. It's like a desire to get that perspective that puts it to rest so we can move on to other adventures.
I love it. Brilliant perspective. I love that. Okay, cool. Because I've asked a couple of people about this. I'm getting to have more conversations like this, but in my day-to-day out here, there's not really a lot of people that think this way. So I struggle a little bit with articulating these kind of ideas, but now I've been grateful enough to talk to folks like you, like Jojo, like you were talking about. And you guys just have some great ideas about this stuff. And it's really warm and comforting. Like I said, that we found a soul tribe. I love that. So tell me about your podcast, Third Eye Awakening. It's so cool. How'd you get that started?
Like in the most basic way ever, before I was ready, as we are advised to do, with a pair of earbuds on my phone and the Anchor app.
Okay.
But
yeah.
It was similar. I don't have a lot of people in my geographically local area to talk about these things with. And I just spent a lot of time feeling like a crazy person, based on people's reactions, but I also felt like I don't know, but like not crazy too. You know what I mean? Like just feeling very valid in my perspectives, but I just couldn't find anybody to jive with them. And so I wanted to start a podcast that just honors how beautiful and how challenging spiritual awakening is, and just to talk about all those things. And I had no idea where it was going to go or what would become of it, but I started it despite, and it was a big deal because I was very afraid of talking publicly and openly about these things and receiving more of that, what I perceived to be rejection and ridicule. But that's not the response I've gotten at all.
No.
Turns out there's a ton of us who are geographically distant from each other, but want to talk about these things. So it's been great.
That's so cool. What's one of the most interesting shows that you've had? I know it's hard to pick because you don't want to make a guest feel bad or anything like that. But as far as just clarity gleaned or anything like that, do you have one in mind off the top of your head?
Yeah, I had actually the last episode that I just released with Mike Romanelli, that was a great, great conversation, the Free Thinkers Society podcast. And I think even, oh my gosh, I feel like that's all I do now is have amazing conversations with people. I really liked hearing his perspective because he came to spiritual awakening following conspiracies, whereas I came to conspiracies following spiritual awakening. So that was kind of cool. Hearing Trevor Montavon talk about how he's managed like depression and mental illness and Crohn's disease through like different mindfulness techniques was very cool. Oh man, yeah, it is hard. It's hard to pick which ones stand out to me. And then I've been recording like crazy too, because I'm pregnant with an army, probably.
You are, yeah. How many babies do you have in there? That's what I said. We were messaging the other day, and it looks like
I gotta get an ultrasound and find out.
You have like 17 kids in there, dude. I was saying in our message that you look like a snake that swallowed a basketball because you're so tiny and you're so thin, and then you have this gigantic horde of human beings inside of you right now. It's hilarious.
Yeah, so exactly. So I'm recording a ton of podcasts so that I can like keep steadily releasing them even as I approach birthing and after the baby or babies are born.
Yeah.
So there's a ton too that I don't want to spoil for people, but man, like people's really cool experiences with like one guy was in a car accident when he was 2 and it changed, like he describes it as changing the harmonics of his brain.
Wow.
And what he can experience. And now he lives on this like crazy haunted piece of land that he's like, I don't know what to do about this. And
God, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's
people
awesome.
who have alien experiences, it's just fun.
Oh yeah. I love every bit of this. This is great. It is. It's like a calling. It's pretty cool. So let me ask you about North Star. So tell us about that.
The North Star?
Yeah. Well, you're North Star 2020.
Yeah. So, well, when I was picking a business name, I went with the North Star because I had a friend a long time ago when I was still feeling crazy. He said that if he was going to describe me, it would be Stellar Polaris, because he just felt like anytime he talked to me, he would like write back onto his past. And I felt like that was the greatest compliment ever. And I kind of thought that's sort of the vibe that I, hope to emulate in my practice as an Akashic reader, is to help people find their North Star, like their path. Like, so rather than deferring to my version of the truth, I just really want to help them to, like hone in on the beacon of their truth.
Yeah, you're giving people back to themselves. That's why I feel like I'm here. Great job. That is so cool. And I knew it was a navigational thing, but I love the way you put it. So how, when you look into the Akashic Records, what's the process like with you on an individual level? Because I've heard you do a few readings on your show. Just walk us through how that feels and what that looks like.
So it feels kind of like I'm connecting with that person's energy. So it's a little bit like they've given me permission and then I meld into their energy field, because I believe that the Akashic Records, on one hand, I say it's around us everywhere, meaning that there's this collective Akashic Records. So I think I didn't explain this properly before. There's a field of information, but in the sense that it's a Google search for your soul, is that each of us as a soul, as an individual soul, we've been through so many experiences, and those experiences are recorded in this place, or like the information that we glean from those experiences stays in this field. And to me, what it feels like is I just meld into somebody else's energy, and I can kind of connect with their Akashic Records. So sometimes I'm just reading the current way that they feel about themselves now, and that's less of the Akashic Records, more of just their energy. But then I'm getting information from their past experiences, and it doesn't really look like anything except that the information feels like it just gets dropped into my crown, and then it sort of trickles down through my third eye and blooms into a picture that I use to help me describe the otherwise very abstract information.
Yeah.
But it does feel like there are record keepers who, and I never see them, I can sense a presence of like, they're directing me to the correct information, or they're handing me like, this is what they need to know right now, in order to like really move the needle for them and shift things.
Yeah.
So I know that's really vague, but the whole interesting point is that it's very subtle information, and my skill that I have developed over time is just to trust it and to like feel the difference between my brain wanting to interfere and just the direct information that I'm getting, and just share from that place.
Yeah, it's like you're a spiritual remote viewer. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
See something,
Yeah,
and then
I
you
guess
have
so.
to. Yeah, I like it. It's pretty cool. Okay, well, what in your mind is one thing that humanity needs to come to terms with, or even on an individualistic level, but on a greater level as well, before we can move forward?
Yeah, I mean, to not fear our shadow and not fear our trauma, and that it really has to be cleaned up, because where we're wanting to head, like in terms of the Great Awakening and the spiritual ascension and stuff that gets talked about a lot, all this stuff that's being brought up right now is because it will not fit. It's not a match to that level of consciousness. So we have to take inventory of it. We have to, decide what we're integrating into our consciousness, our vibrational field, and carrying forward, and what stuff we're leaving behind. Like, we just can't keep dragging this baggage around forever. And I mean that on an individual level and a collective level. So one of the most powerful acts of service any of us can do at all is just like get real with ourselves and heal our shit. Because we all have stuff to heal, all of us. And it's an act of service that benefits us, but it benefits like all life everywhere, human life and otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this though, because it comes back to, I think, that feeling of wanting to wake everybody up and wanting to unplug everybody from the matrix, to use the metaphor, and tell everybody, look, you're being fucked. Here's the conspiracy theories, they're real and whatever. Wake up. So that it almost feels like that responsibility is so that we can collectively ascend to this next thing. So my question really is I know ascension works on an individual level, but am I responsible for waking society up? Otherwise, we all get held back here. Like, is it a collective thing we all have to do, or like tip the scales in the other direction so that the frequency matches? Or is it something that once you figure it out, then cool, you're let in? It's like a secret door or something like that. And so this person's let in, and those who haven't figured it out or don't even want to look into it, they're still left back there. Is it that kind of split?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So what I've seen is that the tipping point has already been reached. It's done. So now we're just watching it play out on our 3D, 4D level. But we don't have a responsibility to wake anybody else up, as like, even if it were like that and we needed the tipping point hadn't been reached, it is an individual thing. Like you said, like, oh man, I found this. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it to demystify it a little bit. So it's like, if you imagine yourself as like a vibrating field, like you're just vibrating and oscillating as a wave form or something. It's like, once you figure out how to adjust your wave frequency so that it's higher amplitude, shorter waves, more like the violet spectrum than the red spectrum, then you're going to just progress to the next the place that we're ascending, which is just a higher level of consciousness. And so we don't have to worry that everybody gets there in order to do it. We all just do it for ourselves. But what I've seen is the huge majority of humanity really desires to ascend at this time. Even the ones who still appear to be asleep, they have embedded in their lives catalysts for awakening. And every time we try to push them to awaken, we really don't set them back. It can feel that way. It's just that they will get there when they get there, and it'll be perfect for them. And for some of them, it'll look like very, very last minute. But what it does look like is a bifurcation of realities. So whereas we've all kind of been like, melded together for a long time, it's a little bit like oil and water separating. So the higher frequency is going to experience something separate from the lower frequency. And what that looks like is that there are souls who still desire to play in the realm of extreme polarity and duality and 3D, deep immersion in our avatar identity. And it's like they just have a lot to get out of that adventure still. It's not really about being trapped there. It just looks that way from our perspective, our ground level 3D perspective. But it's just that their soul desires to have more time in that playing field. And most of us, our souls like, okay, we've spent a lot of time here, figured it out, we're ready to go on and create like in different ways. But ultimately, even like I hate even using the term darkness, because the nighttime is dark and that doesn't make it evil, but the darkness, the darkest of the dark, is still part of the whole. And we all return to source at some point. So they're just taking a longer detour.
Okay, good. Because I like, it's comforting the way you put it, because that's how I felt anyway, but I just wanted to make sure and hear it from you. Because it does feel like if it is on us to wake people up, number one, I don't think that that's anybody's responsibility, right? The information comes to you because, again, I want to believe that it's a ride, right? We're all here just to experience life and whatever we want. But it is interesting because, yeah, as we all are ascending, you guys enjoy the 3D thing. We're going to go play over here in 5D or even higher. I like the K-bye element to it, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Like, LOL, bye.
Yeah. It's been fun playing.
Right. Yeah. You guys enjoy. Yeah. We've taken enough laps. We're gonna shag ass here. So let me ask you this though. What's like your concept of reality? Because I know that everybody's reality is subjective, and what you experience is what you perceive, and all of those things. What do you think this place is? And not to put you on the spot or anything. It's not about that. Just talking about ideas here.
I think it's a simulation, but I don't think it's a simulation like the Matrix. I think that there is a false Matrix overlay that, controls or influences our perception. But ultimately, this realm, I believe, is like a beautiful organic simulation insofar as it's super responsive to us, way more than we realize. Like, I'm just still learning how to, fine tune that dial and see what I can experience as a result of that, of controlling my own inner settings. And it's amazing. It continues to blow my mind all the time. So I think we're in this beautiful simulation that is kind of like, almost like the physical world is a green screen experience, insofar as ultimately we are interpreting energy through our 5 senses as electrochemical signals. And then all of that interpretation is happening in this dark, silent chamber, where no light gets in our brain. And then somehow we interact with it in the outside world. So I think we are these amazing projectors. Like, we receive information, process it, and then project it back out onto a green screen. And it's a little bit like a video game that, ultimately the video game is just code. It's all code, but we interpret the processing software interprets the code and turns it into a picture, an environment. So I think that's what's going on. But I also don't think that I don't think the Earth exists only in our heads. I think it exists independently, but we just react to it, and it responds in way more flexible ways than we realize. We just assume it's all just like, it's real, it's factual, it's solid. So
yeah, it's an Albert Einstein thing. Reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one, right?
Yeah.
I like it. I like that concept a lot. An interesting thing that I was thinking of too, because to the simulation part of it and the video game part of it, the way you described it was wonderful. I've never heard it said that way. I think that maybe it is basically a video game or like a ride, like I said, but more of a video game to where you unlock different levels here, and that you kind of, because you and I experience reality on a different level. We're not worried about this 3D thing, not that better than, we're just on different levels. And so the ascension, I don't want to take anybody who's in a different level and make them, I'm not a levelcist, okay?
Right.
I just I want
not hierarchical.
That's right. It's just different, okay? But it feels like then you unlock different levels to the simulation, and then you kind of level up a little bit in the sense that now you're experiencing more of what you choose, not what's better for everybody. Because like you said, you don't want to be a snowboarder, but you could if you wanted to, right? What you choose is what you can have and operate in. And I think like you, I've been playing a lot with the idea of manifestation and creating my reality. And one of the ways that I did that, I saw a video on TikTok. Actually, my wife finally got me on TikTok. It's actually pretty cool because there's several things on there that if you start liking and clicking, the algorithms are pretty spot on. It'll only give you this stuff and not this other stuff. But there was one that talked about parallel worlds theory, and I talked about this on Paul Wilson's show that he was just on. And it's basically a hack that you do to hack your reality. And it's interesting in the way that, because if you think about like what you said about the quantum realm, but what you observe is all you can see. I don't know what's going on out there. I can see what's going on outside that window, but just to the left of that or to the right of that, maybe nothing's rendered there, right? But it's interesting because in the shower, so you get in the shower in the morning, okay? And if you say, okay, my reality was this reality, it's a multi-worlds type of an idea to where you could shift your consciousness between parallel infinite realities where all of them are slightly different. But what you do is you control the one that you shift into so that it more aligns with your goals, where opportunities are just tsunamis now pushing you forward instead of these current horribles and obstacles, right? So what you do is you get in the shower, you close that curtain or the door or whatever, and all you can see is this reality. You're in this small space with the water and everything. And then you say before you turn the water off that you're stepping into a greater, grander version of who you really are. You're stepping into this reality where blank, right? Where I am a bigger part of my dreams or whatever. Well, things align better for me. And then you turn the water off and you step out into a new reality. And it's fascinating how that kind of stuff happens, and it's so much fun. It's maybe something that people out there want to try. Be deliberate with it though. Be realistic, about what you really, really want, and just ask for it and just step out into that world.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's such a brilliant I don't know, like hack, I guess, like you said, a brilliant sort of like playful, light, but super effective game that you play to bypass your own conscious bullshit that keeps you in like that stream where you feel blocked and full of obstacles everywhere, right? And like switch you over into the equally totally accessible one of, no, everything is working out, like shit's just pouring into my life and like blossoming everywhere. Like those are equally accessible. But if we have conscious strong identification with our but stories, then we're not going to access it. And that's a brilliant way to like just switch totally, like going through a portal or stepping out into a different world, a different reality.
It's fun. Are you going to try this now?
I'm totally going to try it.
Like I said, not my idea. I've just been implementing it because a lot of, and I'm a big fan of synchronicities. That's how these things work, And so it's one of those things that when it did pop up, I was just like, and there's short little videos. But there's, like I said, it's some dope shit on there. It's not all crazy kids dancing and shit like that. You can actually find some pretty interesting things that are interesting. So but try it out. It's a lot of fun. Then you just step out into this new reality. It was like I did that, and then what was it? Oh, the first day I did it, I stepped out into my new reality, and I got a email from Neil Donald Walsh's assistant that he's going to come on the show and talk about his new book. You know who that is?
Yes.
Conversations with God, right?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this reality is dope. Let's just keep it rolling here.
Yeah.
And I'm just, because that's the guy, that book, the first Conversations with God, that's what changed my perception on everything. It came to me right at the right time. I read it. It was warm. I was just like, hang on, there's other concepts out here. And I was just like, okay, well, now I got to explore those. There's 2 books that have done it for me. That one and The Four Agreements by Domingo Ruiz. So it's interesting. And I like the life hack because that's a further way that you do control your reality. And then Paul and I were also talking about the blue car analogy. So it's about what you pay attention into your reality, and this is observable by everybody. Even the ones who say that this is woo-woo and horseshit. That's fine. But what you do is that you think about a blue Tesla, was his example. And he said, and now you see blue Teslas everywhere because now it's on your radar, right? I call it the Lego piece. When I was a kid, and I still play with Legos. I'm not ashamed of it. They're great.
Me too.
Okay, awesome. But I just like the concept of it. Anyway, but it was the Lego piece idea because, eventually all of your sets end up into that great big Tupperware thing and you're digging through it and you're looking for that 4x4 piece and you're like, damn it, I know I have hundreds of these. What the hell? And you go, you know what? I'm going to move on to this other piece and I'll look. And then you move on to the 2x2s. All you see are 4x4s now, the original piece you were looking for. And you can do this in real life. And so I asked him, I was like, so instead of replacing the concept of car, like now you only see blue cars because they're on your radar, what if you exchange that word for the word opportunity? And so now all you see are opportunities. And then now your world and your reality is consumed with opportunities. You don't have room for bullshit. It's a fun way to play with your reality. And I encourage anybody to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. And I mean, it is verified, right? But it's so cool when you really integrate it into your own understanding and then start to see the results in your experience as you move through life. But like, I feel like our attention is such a powerful currency. Like it's the most powerful currency. And what we put our attention on is what blooms. And that's like really as simple as it is. Then there's the other part where we have to like deal with our yeah, but stories. That's harder. But it kind of lends to that question or that statement that you made like way kind of towards the beginning of the conversation around conspiracies of how like the way that we react is part of the plan or whatever, right? It's because our attention is so powerful. The currency of our attention is what charges up all these sigils, all these rituals, all these things. And that's what causes us to then render the reality that they would like us to render. That's why we are fed all this imagery on television, all these subliminal messages, why our freaking concept of love is so codependent and pain-filled. Like that's what just keeps getting like strummed and strummed and strummed through music, through entertainment media. It's because all of these things are really powerful. And if they keep us continuing to reproduce disempowering experiences, then it's easier to continue to manipulate us. So to that end, I kind of got to this point a while ago where I said to my husband, and he was pretty much in the same place. I was like, I feel like I've gotten all the information I need. I'm up to speed on the conspiracies. Like every now and then I'll dip my toe in to like keep current of what's going on. But like, I don't care that Bill Gates has bought all the farmland. That doesn't mean that, I don't think that there's, I'm not supposed to say his name. Shit.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
edit that out.
You're good.
I don't think that means like, it might sound like somebody might accuse me of having a privileged sort of ability to say that because I'm in Canada. But similarly, like our prime minister is not doing cool things right now.
No.
But I'm like, what if I just don't care and keep living my life and look at my beautiful daughter and like feel the spring coming and connect with all these amazing people that are coming into my world? What if I give all my attention to that and let these gigantic toddlers have their temper fit over here and I just don't feed them any of my energy and my attention and my currency and create the reality that I want to experience?
So well said. So fucking well said. You nailed it. Because I have gotten to the same exact place. Yes, it's cool. And if you want to talk about whether the moon landing was fake or not, we could splinter off into those concepts. And I will talk about it for you because I'm well versed in those things because I did look at it for a long time, but just like you. And it's brilliant the way you said it. It's cool that we're having this conversation now because we booked this, like a month ago?
Yeah.
And so, but if we'd had this conversation a month ago, I wouldn't have had that life hack. I wouldn't be in the spot. So it's all that divine timing. And I love this reality. I'm having such a blast here. This is so much fun. So But it's just like you said, it's just let the toddlers go play with their toys over there. That's fine, because it robs you of the only thing that you have control over, which is how you spend your time. And I love that you said that attention is currency. Completely agree. And, I've been saying for a little bit now, as I've been detaching from those ideas, that if we are, as a society, however we're doing it, marching towards totalitarianism, we're not there yet. And the only thing that you can do is how you spend each day and each moment and how you cherish each thing that happens up until that point. Again, in Texas, we got the saying, borrowing trouble. And if you're worried about the future and you're worried about anything in general, because worrying's like a rocking chair, gives you something to do, doesn't get you anywhere. But it is something that robs you of the most valuable currency you have, which is your attention, which is your love. And that's something that you could be spending time with your spouse or your partner, with your children, with your animals, with your dog. Go play with your dog, dude. Fuck
Totally.
that Bill Gates
Go
guy.
on my walk.
Thank you. Yes, go outside. There's a whole dope world going on out there. Go take some mushrooms and go to the park or something, Well, I love the concept. I think it's wonderful. I think you're amazing. I think actually, if you want, we can go ahead and wrap it up here because I want you to have a little bit of a break in between your call. I know that you jumped off one to come on this. So take a little break. Go spend some of that valuable attention currency with your family for a little bit before your next commitment. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, I am looking forward to talking with you again. And if you don't mind, just for the audience here, let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, the easiest places to find me are my Instagram, which the handle is @thenorthstar.love. And my Facebook group, Soul Space, that's where I just kind of show up at least once a week and go on a random rant and answer questions and things like that. And Third Eye Awakening podcast. Those are the places to find me. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll link all of that in the show notes. So if you don't have to go Google or hunt that thing down. It'll all be right below in the show notes. Just go down there, click on it. You know how to do it. Amy Belair, thank you so much. This was so wonderful. You were an absolute delight. You're welcome anytime. You're part of the Soul Tribe now.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this a lot, and it was a huge joy. I'm looking forward to shortly talking with you again soon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Incredibly grateful to get Amy Belair on the show. Thank you so much, Amy. That was an absolute blast. You guys check out her podcast, Third Eye Awakening, linked below in the show notes, as well as her Instagram as well. It's fun and she's awesome. So for this show, you guys could find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The YouTube video of this will be up on YouTube at Expanding Reality. You guys go check that stuff out. If you want to contact the show directly, you could do so at expandingrealitypodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing feedback from you guys. Y'all are so sweet. So thanks again for everything. You guys take some of that information, apply it to your everyday life. Go out into the world, pick up a piece of litter, get the hell out of the left-hand lane. Just be good to one another. That's it. Just y'all be good to each other.
Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/smartcookie.